Newsmax TV political analyst Dick Morris is here. We should also point out that we are joined from Newsmax New York by our own Steve Malzberg, and by telephone from Los Angeles, we've got political commentator Michael Reagan, and by Skype from Northern Virginia, presidential historian and Reagan biographer Craig Shirley. Of course, Craig's new book is Last Act, The Final Years and Emerging Legacy of Ronald Reagan. With that title, let's begin by talking to the Reagan we've got on the telephone. Michael Reagan, out there on the West Coast, your perspective of what's happening tonight on the East Coast.
I don't think anybody's surprised that Donald Trump is winning in South Carolina. And I think that going to happen with Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio, and that's the tight race, because the fight truly is for second and third tonight in South Carolina. Everybody knew who was going to come in first. So I think there's a lot of candidates, not a lot, but a few of the candidates really have to look at themselves and say, should I stay in the game? And if I don't stay in the game, should I in fact endorse somebody that is in the game? So right now, imagine there's a lot of talk among those who are going to come in fourth, fifth, and sixth.
And let's talk more about, well, not only those fourth, fifth, and sixth place finishers, but Craig Shirley, to you with Trump. It was his to lose. He did not lose tonight. Now a tight battle for second place. Do you follow what Michael has to say? Do you expect those candidates, Jeb Bush, not John Kasich, but Ben Carson, two of those three finishing in the second tier, to have a serious talk with themselves and their supporters before too much longer?
Yeah, well, JD, I think that Michael's absolutely right. I think that certainly Ben Carson is going to start having a conversation. He's, as you reported, he's having money problems. Obviously had a message problem. But the other candidates are going to rationalize it. They're going to say, look, Trump won, but he only got one out of every three Republican primary voters, and he had the benefit of being attacked by the Pope. And I will get him into more favorable terrain, or get a more favorable argument, or get another bite at the apple. And I've already got money, so I doubt that anybody else is probably going to drop out. Even Jeb Bush is probably going to stay in, even though there's probably very little rationale right now for Jeb to stay in.
Steve Malzberg, to the campaign of Jeb Bush, currently in fourth place. This whole notion of his past with Marco Rubio and the deterioration of that relationship, do you expect Bush to stay in like Craig is saying and just scale back his campaign? It's not that he doesn't have dough, but he's got to spend it very judiciously to remain in this race till Florida.
I don't understand why he would do that. He could do it. He might do it because he could, as someone once famously said. But I just don't understand it. This was his place, and again, his brother was trashed. He brought his mom out. His mom was out again today. She was with him at some of the polling places. If he finishes fourth, a disappointing fourth, just barely ahead of the fifth place finisher, John Kasich, I mean, it's an embarrassment. You want to curl up and go hide somewhere. You don't want to stay out there. It doesn't make any sense.
And especially galling, Dick Morris, since Steve Malzberg referenced your book because he could about a past president, but this whole situation about Rubio. Yeah. Certainly, between those two Floridians, Marco is sitting in a better position tonight than Governor Jeb Bush.
Oh, of course, yeah, sure. And whether Bush stays in or not is really not important, because most of the states that vote now on March 1st have threshold requirements. So, for example, if you had the same vote that is shown on the bottom of your screen there, by the way, that's with about 10% in, at that point, Trump, Cruz, and Rubio would divide the delegates, and Bush, Kasich, and Carson would get 0, 0, 0. And they would, Bush and Trump would get about 40, and Cruz and Rubio would get about 30 each. That's how it would work. So when you're at these threshold states, if you're below the threshold, you're not getting anything. And the message tonight is that because most of these states on Tuesday have either 20% or 15% thresholds, about 70% of them. Anybody who stays in the race is going to come out of Super Tuesday, maybe with some votes, but with no delegates.
Michael Reagan, back to you, because you have told us of your personal involvement in your dad's campaign, especially in that critical 1980 race. The story I heard back on that fateful night at the Renaissance Center in Detroit was that your dad took a look at the polling and George Herbert Walker Bush was running a strong second, and that was the decision to put him on the ticket. You obviously know the Bush family. Do you expect Jeb to stay in this thing, Michael Reagan?
I think Jeb really has to find his firewall, and he thought the firewall was going to be South Carolina. I don't know if he can stay around till March 15th for a winner-take-all state like Florida. And by the way, I was in the room when Herbert Walker Bush was chosen to be the vice president of the United States. That's not quite the way it went down historically, but the reality is he did choose George Herbert Walker Bush to go forward. And I think that Jeb has got some real problems. He's brought everybody out. Everybody in the family's come out to help him in South Carolina. And you're looking at Marco Rubio is going to beat him, it looks like, by double digits. That just doesn't bode well, and you've got to have a hard talk with all your contributors. And
with the family gathered there, Craig Shirley, does tonight signal the beginning of the end for the Bush campaign?
Yeah, I think so, JD. I don't see a way out. There never was a rationale or a message or anything motivating to be for Jeb Bush, other than he was a Bush, and his father was president, and his brother was president. But other than that, it's probably the end of the road for the Bush dynasty. And that's,
JD, can I jump in?
Yep. Go ahead, Michael. Go ahead.
JD, I think one of the big problems that Jeb Bush had from the beginning is he thought with all the money he had with PAC and everything else, foregone conclusion, he was going to win the nomination. And I think he started to run a national campaign for the presidency of the United States. And while he was running a national campaign, other people came in and started running a state-by-state-by-state campaign and blew him out of the water.
One other thing going on there, Steve Malzberg, the fact that Jeb, the way it was explained early on with that big chunk of change, Steve, was that Jeb was going to try to win without the traditional Republican base, but with those who were, if you fill in the blanks, I guess you'd say loyal to the Bush family name and those folks. Your take on that quickly, and then we'll get Dick Morrison on this. Go ahead, Steve Malzberg.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. But I think Jeb Bush's fate was really sealed, to be honest with you, when he said that those who come over the border illegally are committing not a crime but an act of love. And Trump, from day one, went after him without mercy. Maybe he made a fool of himself even in doing it, but he made Bush look inadequate, inept, defenseless, and I think he just ruined Bush in the eyes of the voter.
I think Steve is right, of course, but as to what Trump did to Bush. But there's a broader point here. With all of the hollering on the Democratic side, particularly about the evil importance of money and billionaires buying the political process, this is an object lesson in the irrelevance of money in a high-profile presidential campaign. Jeb Bush entered this with multiple times the money of anybody else, and you see how he's doing. Sanders entered this being outspent by Hillary a zillion to one, and now he's actually outspending her, not because of special interest money, but because of direct mail money, money from small donors, which he's raking in. And it really shows that campaign finance reform is something that's happening de facto.
And let's reset this now at about 5 minutes past 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. If you're just joining us, it is worth reiterating. You see the numbers at the bottom of the screen, but Donald Trump projected the winner of tonight's South Carolina Republican primary. Donald Trump doing this despite, as Dick just mentioned, the billions of dollars in personal fortune, but largely with what we call in the television business free media. The fact that Mr. Trump became the straw
he spent almost nothing.
Yeah, he becomes the straw that stirs the drink. Michael Reagan, back to you out in California. You have made no secret of your concerns about Mr. Trump, but certainly he has been able to attract the attention, to dominate the conversation, and to speak in a way that resonates with a whole lot of folks voting in Republican primaries thus far.
Oh, you're doing a great job of really owning the day. I said the other day to you, I say he probably wrote $1 million check to the Catholic Church thanking them for all the publicity he got for the Pope saying what he was saying. So he's doing a great job at that level. But it's completely different running after you get the nomination than running to get the nomination. And can he say the same things, come across the way he comes across, and bring Democrats and independents to the team? Because in order for a Republican to win, you have to expand who's going to be voting. We are the minority party for a reason. In order to win, we have to attract independents and Democrats. And will that kind of diatribe he puts out there win those people on board?
And with the minute and a half that remains, let me get both the here and now and the historical perspective from Craig Shirley. Craig, we used to get lectures about Michael Reagan's dad, about in the wake of Barry Goldwater, conservatives could never win. Yet Ronald Reagan attracted those independents and those blue-collar Democrats. Can Donald Trump do that? About a minute remains.
I think he has the potential to do it, especially against if Hillary's on her way to the nomination. I think that she has such narrow appeal that she can't really break out of a traditional liberal Democratic base, and she's going to alienate a lot of suburban and culturally conservative blue-collar Democrats in states like New Jersey and Pennsylvania and others. So I think, it remains to be seen, but I think the potential is there if he's the nominee, if he's smart, if he runs a good convention, if he picks the right running mate, and he runs a good general election. I think anything's possible at this point.
Of course, to put it in perspective, we project Trump the winner of the primary tonight. There's still a road to the nomination. Steve Malzberg, final thought here in about 20 seconds, sir.
Hillary did not do well with independents tonight, despite the fact that she won Vegas. Donald Trump has done well with independents. And if it's the two of them up on the stage, remember, this Democratic Party is so far to the left that she will have tremendous trouble appealing to a mass, broader audience than just her radical left-wing Democratic base. And Donald Trump can do that.
And we will have to end it right there. Steve Malzberg, Newsmax, New York. Michael Reagan by telephone from the West Coast. Craig Shirley via Skype from Northern Virginia. You have our thanks. Dick and I will return. We hope you'll stay where you are as we continue our coverage of the South Carolina primary.